Good morning, everybody. This is First Sergeant Rich Myers with the Indiana State Police Public Information Office. You have tuned in to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. We thank them for their continued support of the show and their monetary donations so that we can continue the Indiana State Police Roadshow each and every week. We want to thank Tom Trial, who's behind the scenes. Wave at Tom. Good morning, Tom. And want to thank him for putting us on YouTube, the Indiana State Police YouTube site. So let it be known that you can go to our YouTube site and watch the show besides listening to it. Well, this morning I have a new guest, someone that's never been with us on the road show. We have a lot of continued guests that come back, but this morning I have Melanie Wagner. Good morning, Melanie.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming in this morning.
No problem.
We appreciate you being here.
No problem.
Melanie is from our laboratory division, civilian employee with the Indiana State Police Laboratory Division. And Melanie, so tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you go to school? Where did you go to high school at first?
I went to high school in Metro Detroit.
Wow.
Up in Michigan.
Okay. Big school?
Catholic school.
Okay.
All girls.
All right.
Yeah.
How was that?
Made it out of there. Yeah.
Is this true about nuns at the Catholic school? Are they pretty?
There were no nuns really.
Oh, okay. So they didn't.
It was mostly just regular teachers.
It's not like the Blues Brothers show where they whack you.
No.
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was good.
Okay.
It was a good study environment.
Yeah. So after high school, where did you further your education?
I went to University of Michigan in Ann Arbor.
Okay.
Did a molecular biology degree there, and then after that, I got an internship with the Michigan State Police for about 6 months.
Okay.
That was in 2006, and then I just kind of interviewed wherever I could find forensic job openings.
Right. Yeah.
Whether or not I was qualified for them. And I got a few interviews, including here.
Good.
Came down here to interview and got the job, and the rest is history. Started in 2007.
So is your family still in Michigan?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any plans on moving back? Are you enjoying your Indiana visit?
No, I got out before the big three died, so the economy kind of busted up in Michigan.
Yeah.
It was safe down here in Indiana.
Are your folks near this big water problem they're having up there?
In Flint?
Yeah.
No, they're south by Detroit, but yeah,
that's kind of a mess.
Pretty bad up there. Yeah.
So good. So brothers, sisters?
I do. I have a little brother and a little sister. My sister is getting her PhD from Duke in a few weeks.
Great, wonderful.
Yeah. So she's a molecular biologist too.
Okay.
But she does plants instead of humans.
And what about your brother?
He works for a family company with my dad. So.
What kind of work is that?
They do car manufacturing, car parts.
Kind of Detroit car manufacturing.
Yeah, just one of
the
one of the little cogs in the big wheel.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, we're glad to have you here. We appreciate you coming in here and talking about the laboratory division, and specifically DNA is what we're going to be talking about today. With the Indiana State Police Roadshow. So you came down here, and how long have you been with Indiana State Police now?
9 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's flown by?
It kind of has, yeah. It feels like I've been here forever, but at the same time, I can't believe it's been 9 years. It's only been 9 years.
So what exactly is your job title? What do you do for the Indiana State Police Laboratory Division?
I'm a forensic DNA analyst.
Okay, and what does that entail?
So I take evidence that comes into the lab, and I examine it for the presence of possible body fluids, which are good sources of DNA. Mm-hmm. And once I find those, I try to perform DNA analysis on them. So I take samples of the evidence and I manipulate it in the lab and eventually run it through our instruments and get a DNA profile. And then I compare that DNA profile to the DNA profile of any known individuals that are associated with the case, like a victim or a suspect.
Okay.
And then I can write a report saying that this DNA probably came from this person or it didn't come from this person.
So do we have DNA in every part of our body? Everything has DNA?
Yeah, except for red blood cells.
Okay.
Strangely enough, yeah.
So anything that is touched or bled upon or spit on or anything, any kind of body fluid is going to leave some DNA mark on a piece of evidence.
That's right.
Is that true with other dogs?
Yes.
Okay.
But we don't have to worry about things like dog DNA because our process is specific for human DNA.
Okay.
There's ways to tell it apart that our chemicals only look for human DNA.
Okay.
So we don't have to worry about all the bacteria because that would be everywhere too.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. So when you get this in evidence, and I'm assuming it comes packaged in different ways and different things, and you get all kinds of different pieces and parts, do you get human pieces and parts that come in?
Not really. There sometimes we'll have tissue samples from unidentified remains, but those are kind of rare, and that's not the common evidence we receive. Usually it's objects or swabs of objects at a scene. We'll get swabs of the crime scene. If there's like a blood trail, they'll test that.
Okay.
And so we try not to get like large objects in. We don't want like a whole couch. We don't want the whole bed. We want pieces of it that could be of interest.
Well, when we do, you're probably familiar with this too. We've handed out before, myself being in the PIO side of the house, DNA identification kits for kids. Where we used to take fingerprints, and they'd be a muckety mess because trying to fingerprint a
child,
3 or 4 year old is like trying to fingerprint a cat. You just are all over the place, and you're not going to get anything good. So today we do the DNA samples with that. Actually, we give them to the parents to do, and the instructions identify them to swab the inside of the mouth, let that dry, and put it in an envelope. And it's good forever. Is that pretty much true with what they do on evidence submittal?
That's pretty much how we do it for convicted felons as well.
Really?
Yeah.
So explain that about the convicted felons. We were talking about that a little bit before we came on there. How does that work out also?
So in Indiana, we have a law that collects DNA samples from all convicted felons. So anybody convicted of a felony is required to give a DNA sample in Indiana for inclusion in our DNA database. And our DNA database is part of the national DNA database, which is called CODIS, which stands for Convicted Offender DNA Identification System.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's right.
It's close.
I haven't had to say that in a long time.
It's a DNA sample of convicted felons.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, the convicted offenders are in this database, and when we get a crime scene sample in and it does not match to anything we already know, so it doesn't match to a victim or a suspect or anybody else involved in the case, we can put it into that database and search that database. And so then if it ever hits, or if it ever matches anything in that database, then we'll find out, and we'll be able to write a report about that and tell the investigator about it, and then we can prosecute it, hopefully.
Is that pretty common? Do we get quite a few hits?
We do. Yeah, we get about a 40% hit rate, I want to say.
Wow.
Yeah. So that means like of all the DNA profiles we put in there, about 40% of them get an association.
Is that not necessarily in Indiana? That could be nationwide?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty good hit rate.
Yeah. It's a very useful tool for forensic science.
So when they submit this, many times they'll submit knowns also with that? So it'll be a victim that they know, and also maybe another person that lives in that house. Do you have to kind of rule those people out? Is that how that works?
Yeah. Usually we'll collect standards, or we'll have the investigator collect standards, which is a standard is just usually a cheek swab from the inside of the mouth.
With what?
With like a cotton swab.
Okay.
Yeah. So they'll just brush the inside of the mouth with a cotton swab and have it dry and put it in an envelope, and that's our standard. And so we'll use that as our source of DNA from those known people. And if we find a DNA profile from the evidence, we want to make sure that it's not someone who lives in the house, because we don't want to put them in the database.
Okay.
So we'll compare that, and if it's not them, then we can put it in the database, which is the combined DNA index system.
Okay.
I remembered.
Well, good. That was bothering you, wasn't it?
I know, it was really bothering me. That was like a basic question. Yeah.
Well, again, you're listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow with First Sergeant Rich Myers. I'm with the Public Information Office with the Indiana State Police, and I have Melanie Wagner from the Forensic DNA Analyst from the Indiana State Police Laboratory. And Melanie has been with the Indiana State Police for 9 years, and we're talking about DNA through the Indiana State Police Laboratory. Is this really come on in the last few years, the DNA sampling and using it for law enforcement?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's boomed.
Right.
I mean, it's we've had DNA analysis since the early 90s.
Okay.
In some form or another, but we didn't have it in its current form until the mid 2000s.
Right.
We had the current chemistry that we're using around then, but ever since then, it's just been picking up, and there's innovations in software, there's innovations in instrumentation, innovations in the chemistry we use, and so it keeps going, and it's exciting to stay on top of it, and that's what I enjoy the most.
Do you find that if this has to go to court, that the juries really rely on DNA anymore?
Yes. We call that the CSI effect, actually.
Okay.
Because
it's all over the TV,
well,
right?
it's all over the TV, and so it kind of creates this false education with jurors where they think they know how forensic science should work because they see it on TV all the time.
Right.
But then in real life, obviously, it's not like that on TV. And they're either disappointed by how it works in real life, or they don't understand what we actually did in real life. One example is how if there is no DNA evidence, but if there is a preponderance of other evidence, like eyewitness reports or fingerprints or something else, a lot of circumstantial evidence even, the jury won't convict because there's no DNA evidence. They expect that there will always be DNA evidence, but there isn't always DNA evidence. It doesn't always work, and sometimes the DNA just isn't there.
Right. Yeah, you could have a burglary with somebody wearing gloves, and you're not going to have anything to show for that.
Yeah. So they expect more than there really is.
Twins.
Twins have the same DNA.
They do?
They do. Identical twins do.
Okay.
Fraternal twins are like just regular siblings, but identical twins have the same DNA as far as we can detect.
So if is there no way to detect between those then? If you have a crime scene that maybe involved one of the twins or something, you can't tell between the two.
That's one of the kind of cutting edge things that is up and coming. There is theoretically a way to tell the difference between them.
Okay.
It's just not widespreadly available.
Right. Yeah.
To forensic labs. It's there theoretically there is a way.
Okay.
But we just don't have it yet.
And it'll be coming. It will be coming.
If it was really important, we could probably work something out.
Yeah. So what about trials? Do you have to testify in trials on this?
I do. Yeah.
And how does that how do you break it down for the jury to understand what you have to do?
We have to just start very basic. I tell them who I am, what I do, much like I have here. I describe what DNA is, and I kind of give them a basic education. And that's ultimately the end result of my job isn't to write a report for the investigators and the police. It's to educate the jury about the case and what I did and why I came to the results that I did. And I have to make them trust me that I know what I'm doing. I am declared an expert, but it's really their determination of that counts. So I have to educate them and tell them what the DNA evidence means, how much weight they should put on it, how important it is to the case, all those things. And so there's education involved and public education.
Do you find that you have to educate the prosecutors themselves a lot of times?
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
because they're not up on it. It's something that they're...
It's something very scientific.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Not everybody is, familiar with all the jargon that we use. And so we have to... We're trained to... And we practice kind of making that more understandable for lay people.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'd have to be, because you're going to have a lot of scientific nomenclature and jargon that you're going to be used every day.
Right. That
the regular person would not understand.
Yeah.
Well, we're down to about 45 seconds out of here, but I appreciate you coming in, Melanie, and talking with us today
Anytime.
about this. This has been a very educational show, and we appreciate what you do out there for the state police, and hopefully your job will be getting easier throughout the years, because I think we're going to be relying on you a lot more.
I hope so.
Well, again, you've been listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. We thank you for listening today. I've had my guest, Melanie Wagner, from the Indiana State Police Laboratory. She's a forensic DNA analyst with the laboratory. Thank you for being here. We'll catch you next week on the Roadshow.
Thanks for having me.
listening. All righty. Bye-bye. Roadshow out.